Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Survivor Becomes a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 60. But Mori Point of View. Meeting the Empress was undoubtedly something. She was definitely charismatic and friendly, and as far as I could tell, it wasn't an act of any kind. She was genuinely good-natured. It took me a moment to think about what Historietta was trying to say, but it clicked soon enough. No, I don't think I've ever used a system. At least, I don't think I've actively used anything as you've described. Historietta, for her part, just looked utterly confused as she opened and closed her mouth a few times, considering what to say as she tapped her chin. After a few moments, she shook her head. I suppose it could be set up differently for different people. But how do you develop your skills and abilities? Like, I've managed to develop moderate poison/venom resistance after being nearly killed a few years ago by a bad mushroom, and then going on to expose myself to weak poisons and venoms ever since. Or, how about my insight skill that allows me to read the intentions of those around me in exchange for a very slow drain to my MP? I learned to actually read body language and behaviors, and the system rewarded my efforts with a skill that helped me improve it on it further. She explained very matter-of-factly, as she freely explained what she knew. She then averted her gaze, seemingly to look at something as she made gestures with her fingers, seemingly swiping at something, not to mention using my appraisal ability. Now I can see some of your information for a set chunk of MP. She squinted a bit and shrugged as she sighed. Not all of it, though. A lot of your information is undoubtedly hidden by one of the buffs your many titles probably granted you, she mentioned, as she scrolled some more, apparently searching for something. What about this? Your builder title grants you access to a set of skills that allows you to shape and form materials without sacrificing the overall mass of the object. Tell me, how did you manage to do that without using a system? She pressed, trying to at least figure things out for herself. I have to think about that for a moment before deciding just to provide an example, as I set a lump of stone I have left over from all of my excavations. It seemed all eyes were on the rock as everyone decided to watch what I was about to do. I don't actively use any sort of menu or skill or whatever it is that you do. I just think about it and will it to be done with my mana. Like this, I state, before starting to shape the lump into a mostly smooth sphere. If I wanted to be even finer, I put in just a little bit more effort and, I explained, leadingly, before smoothing out the stone, giving it a decent finish. Well, as decent as I can make without actually polishing it or using any kind of lacquer or oil. Voila! Rivia seemed rather intrigued as she listened throughout, her mind swirling with observations and ideas. She listened in on the conversation between two humans. She walked over, picking up the grey stone sphere, with a tiny bit of wonder in her gaze. Amazing. And is that how you made those diamonds? She asked curiously, before passing the stone over to Rionum, the Bulkin not really following the conversation, but appreciating the smooth stone for what it was. I take a moment to consider the question, not sure how I want to answer this. If Historietta has some kind of ability that lets her understand the property of things, she may know exactly how I got my diamonds. Yet she doesn't appear to be fazed by the topic when it is brought up. This either means she didn't examine the diamonds, she examined them, and the information about what they used to be didn't come up, or she examined them and didn't care. Something similar, but not exactly. Diamonds are essentially just carbon that has been compressed and superheated. The process takes a long time in nature, though because I know how they are made, I was somehow able to expedite the process and maintain the purity of the gem, despite the material I used. I explained as thoroughly and yet vaguely as I could manage. I looked over to Historietta as she seems to nod at my explanation. Right, and you probably used your combined abilities and buffs from your arsonist, chemist, and purifier titles to achieve all of that. Amazing, she explained to herself as she seemed to continue to look at some kind of invisible screen. I'm feeling more than a little unnerved that my information is just laid bare like that for a stranger of all things. She did mention that she couldn't see everything, but what does that mean? How much can she see? Well, I don't exactly know what she means by skills and the like. What I do get is I probably have the means to hide even more information from her. If that's the case, I probably only have to will for that to happen. With that in mind, I do my best to do just that, as I pull up a mental picture of forming some sort of shroud around my core. Well, I don't see a physical shroud around me. Whatever I did caused something to happen on Historieta's gaze darted around with confusion, looking somewhat surprised before looking around and then looking over to me, appearing rather apologetic. Sorry about that, sir. I was probably being extremely rude just now, she said, lowering her head apologetically as she anxiously scratched the back of her head. She then cleared her throat a bit. If it's okay with you, we would like to stay in this area for the next couple of days. We have a few things to discuss about the future going forward as allies, and personally, I would like to speak to you some more before we leave, she explained, having quickly collected herself as she snapped into a much more professional attitude. I was only taken a little by surprise when it came to her tonal shift. Still, after thinking about it for a moment, I didn't really see anything wrong with her request, especially if we were going to be allies for the foreseeable future. Sure, I don't mind, but just confirm this with Zasita. It'll be his people and home that you'll be intruding on after all, I reminded her. They may be in my care, but at this rate, I'm just a landlord, and they're my tenants, minus the rent. She bowed her head again before smiling as she clasped her hands together. I also brought some gifts as thanks in response to those diamonds you gave us, she mentioned, letting her professional attitude drop again. Regan, my hubby's right-hand man, was really excited about what they could do with those gems, so it was only right that we return the favor as best we can, she explained pleasantly. Revaya seemed to have an internal stroke upon hearing the Emperor being talked about in such a casual fashion. However, I could sense that she couldn't say anything, considering that it was his wife talking about him in such a way. Well, I wasn't expecting anything in return, since those were meant as an apology for interfering with the sting operation that you all had set up here and for getting 2 of the Emperor's servants. I made sure to clarify. After all, I killed 2 people who didn't deserve it, and even if I was able to bring them back, this sort of experience isn't something that's brushed off. Historieta nodded intently. And we know you didn't do it maliciously. She then tilted her head side to side a bit. Well, at least not maliciously towards the Empire. So we just want to make sure that you understand that we intend to back up our word in seeing you as an equal with more than just paper and pretty words. She offered a kind smile. Revaya was rather vocal about all of this, if I'm being honest, dutifully acting as your representative and making your case. So you have her to thank for how things turned out. This was fairly surprising. I know I had sent her out with that in mind, but for her to go so far despite what happened was unexpected. I turned my focus onto her, wondering what her reaction to this reveal would be. While she remained mostly stoic about it, I could sense that she was a little embarrassed to be outed like that. I'll leave it alone for now as I look back towards Historieta. In that case, I'll accept these gifts you brought me in the hopes that we'll be able to continue this alliance. Let's talk later. You all must be tired after your trip, I leadingly suggest. I needed some time to reflect on the things after all, and I don't quite let my guard down until Historieta was on her way. She looked a little disappointed, but bowed her head with respect. Of course, Vitmori, we shall be on our way. With that, she turned to leave. Revaya and Rhiannon stayed where they were, though Rhiannon still rolling a stone ball in his palm as he passed the time. You two go on as well. I'm pretty sure I overheard something about a feast of sorts. I wouldn't want you to miss out. They looked a little hesitant, Revaya in particular, but they both nodded as they made their way out to follow after Historieta. I could feel Rita watching me curiously, a number of questions on her mind. Bringing my focus over to her, I speak out as well. You should go and join them as well. Your friends are already down there anyways, and you should celebrate your newfound freedom. I think of something else while looking at her and continue. You should probably also get some new clothes, and I believe there's some kind of tailor or seamstress in the safe haven who can help you get some proper clothes instead of just a blanket. She seemed to snap out of an internal train of thought before looking herself over, a twinge of embarrassment seeping out from her thoughts at the idea that she was in front of the Empress in nothing but a blanket. All right, Vitmori, I'll do that, she agreed, as she bowed before my core and made her way out. An alliance, huh? I wonder what they're going to expect of me and what I can expect from them. Isak point of view. Things certainly got busy, and Isaac was not entirely sure how to feel about it. There was an entire fleet of Drake Wardens and their mounts just sitting there, skinning fresh game and setting up camp. Not to mention that besides there was an imperial entourage of noble ladies here with a full-blown empress of all things. It just didn't sit right with him, but they were accompanied by a mage and warrior that helped liberate them all the time ago. Not to mention, Jack is the one who ended up leading this group over here, so, in the end, they must have had the approval of Vidmori at least. He huffed before looking at the black cub that seemed to be sitting halfway inside of Isaac's shadow, also watching the group from afar. What do you think about all of this, He knew the cub had a name now, but for the life of him, he couldn't remember it at that moment. The cub in question just lets out a short meet sound before going back to watching all the strangers. Some of the others seemed to have warmed up to the new people, at least. Trisha, walking around the Drake Wardens, commenting on their arms and armor along with Sylvia. The red cub seemed to be playing some kind of game with a couple of red drakes, shooting out controlled spurts of fire into the air or something. Whatever it was, it seemed to get most of the kids' attention. The whole event was supervised by some of the Drake Wardens and a few of the parents. A couple of the Drake Wardens, a few of the ladies, Remy and Luna, are working hard to prepare a feast. However, the new ratkin Mina seems to have taken a shine to Remy, helping out where she can in the longhouse cooking area. Speaking of new faces, the new dwarf, Lansic, is something of a woodsman of all things and has gotten really chummy with Woody and Twig, talking shop, or something along those lines. It seems that they intend of staying for a long haul and are happy to help pick up the slack, thankfully enough. There's a couple more of the new group now that he thinks about it. A half-orc who lived as a mercenary who fell into some kind of horrible debt with the wrong sorts in the hegemony, and a birdkin mage who apparently swore herself into Vidmori's service. She didn't really talk about herself or much at all while she was amongst others. That again worried Isaac. But again, if she was connected with Vidmori and he's letting her roam freely around, then he can't argue too much. Finally, there's the last new face, a relatively young dogkin named Grim. He's a delight. He's just a friendly kid as far as you can tell, though something about him seems oddly nice. That might just be the fact that the kid was almost literally born yesterday, or at least within a week, as far as the shepherd was able to explain. He's rather warmed up to Org, the two around the same level of apparent maturity and naivety, even if they make an odd pair. One is a rather talkative bundle of curiosity and joy, and the other is an exceptionally silent bundle of enthusiasm and surprising forcefulness. Isaac figures he should probably stop watching and soon start enjoying the festivities with the others, but for now, he's comfortable being alone with just him and his shadow, even if the shadow has an occupant. End of chapter. There is a new legend on the horizon. Blueberry Cat has taken the T6 Patreon spot. Thank you very much, and I'm sure that I speak for everyone when I say that. I would just like to thank our T5 members, Lord Azrekahl, AmbroseKTal, Quantem Wensday, Dragzoon W.R.E, Blueberry Cat, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster 177, and Leslie 517. Thank you very much.